Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone back to part 2 of the master plan video series. Part 2 is entitled the Capstone Starburst. This is going to be a really interesting video, and if you haven't watched part 1, the capstone formations, do yourself a favor and go and watch the first video before you progress. There's a lot that's revealed in that video that's going to tie in to everything that I'm talking about. So here we're looking at the title slide for the master plan, and as you can see, the capstone formations has been grayed out. That was the first presentation, and we completed that, and now we're going to move to the right and we're going to be looking at the Capstone Starburst. So here, the Capstone Starburst is part of the Star Trilogy paradigm, and we can see it's made up of the capstone formations, the Capstone Starburst, and the master structure. This is all a movement, really, towards the master structure. The capstone formations, you see, I put the Lim's Chinese Buffet pyramid in the Cave Creek Center sign. That was the puzzle that was completed in the third formation. So that was in a way the highlight as we were making our way through the formations. So now when I finish the Capstone Starburst, I'm going to put an image within the box underneath the Capstone Starburst, and you'll begin to see how everything is beginning to tie together. So wait until the end and you'll see what that is. So the Capstone Starburst is part 2, and it's got a runtime of about an hour. It's nowhere near as long as the first presentation, as the capstone formations. There's a lot that needed to be said within the capstone formations and to kind of build up everything that is unraveling here. So this is only an hour long. So to start off with, what I have up here is a square, and there's a circle inside the square. And we're just going to talk briefly about some review a little bit of early geometry. If you never took it in high school, what I'm going to show you is actually pretty basic, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along. So the circle, so you can read this definition: a plane figure bounded by a single curved line called its circumference, every part of which is equally distant from a point within it called the center. So the actual circle, we see it's a single curved line called the circumference, and every little part is equally distant from a point within it called the center. So here I just put a point within the center, and every part of that circumference is equally distant from that center point. So now what I've done is I've divided the circumference up into one particular unit. This is 1 degree. So when it comes to the circle, it can be divided up. The circumference can be divided up. So this little hatch mark next to the 1 is referencing the degree. So we're at 1 degree. And we can move up, make our way up through the circumference to when we reach a point within it where we're 1/4 of the distance traveled, and that's 90 degrees. So that's 1 quadrant of the circle. We see 90 degrees here. And that circle can actually be divided up into 4 sections, each containing 90 degrees. So to do the easy math, 90 times 4 is 360. So traditionally, and it's very correct, the circle has been divided up into 360 equal segments. So to establish this point now, there are 360 degrees in a circle. And that's important to know, and we'll be referencing this number later. So, but we can still go deeper into the distance here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here on this area. There's this little box that came up. We're going to zoom in and look at the area. So here I've zoomed in. Now this area of the circumference can be divided up even more. So here I've divided the circumference up, and it's been divided up equal segments. And now here I'm showing it's been divided up into 1 unit beyond the degree. And this little symbol here is referencing the minute mark. Okay, so now we're at 1 minute. And we can make our way up incrementally through this area here to see that it has been divided up into 60 minutes. And that's proper math, how when you go the next level magnification down from the degree, it's 60 minutes. It's 60 minutes or it's 1 degree. You see? So, but we're not done yet. We can still zoom in even more for an even more finer level of magnification or resolution. And I'll zoom in on this area now and divide this area up as well. Okay, so this will be the last area that will divide up, and you'll see why I'm striving towards such a fine level of magnification. It's a very high precision unit. So here now we're seeing we're 1 place beyond now the minute mark, and these 2 symbols here represent the second position. So we had degree, then next to it the minute, and now we're in the seconds. So minute and seconds is pretty much like time. So we could begin to make our way up through the incremental gradients, and there are 60 of them. So just like with the minute, you know, there was 60. Now with the second, there's 60 seconds as well. So at this position, we're either at the 60-second mark or we're at the 1 minute mark. Okay, so that's zooming in closer and closer and closer to get a finer level of magnification when it comes to trying to pinpoint an exact location on the circumference of the circle. Okay, so moving on from that, we'll talk now about the base angle of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. It's been measured by many people, and this is a number that I got from an online source, and I've cross-referenced many different areas to see them all coming to this same conclusion. I never measured it personally. But the base angle of the Great Pyramid in Egypt is 51 degrees, 50 minutes, and 35 seconds. So it's a very precise measurement that we see here. Now going off of those previous slides that we just looked at, we can kind of get an idea how close a level of precision was utilized to get this this number here. So we see the base angle here, 51 degrees, 50 minutes, 35 seconds. But what I'm going to tell you is that the blueprint for the Great Pyramid, what they were actually striving for was a precise 54 degrees. The Great Pyramid had casing stones that were applied on top of the pyramid, and they were actually removed from the pyramid just to leave the base bedrock underneath. So there is an error here when we look at the 2 degrees between the 54 degrees and the 51 degrees, 50 minutes, 35 seconds, to see an error of 2 degrees, 9 minutes, and 25 seconds. All right, so for the tools that they had and what they're attempting to do thousands of years ago, they got very close. Okay, so they're only off 2 degrees, and 2 degrees is very minute. But once you begin to make your way up on a very small smidgen of error, it becomes greater and greater as you increase. But still, that's very close to a pure 54 degrees. So with 51 degrees, 50 minutes, 35 seconds, being the base angle at the bottom, and this is a triangle here, that angle is going to transfer up. When we're talking about dealing with the capstone, that's going to be applied onto the Great Pyramid. So 51 degrees, 50 minutes, 35 seconds should be very close to the capstone that should be applied on top of the Great Pyramid. If it was 60 degrees, let's just say, it's out of form. So that's where now the question is raised when we start thinking about the capstone that sits on top of Capstone Cathedral. So the question is, what is the base angle on the capstone? Does it bear the proper dimensions, the proper angles to actually sit on top of the Great Pyramid? What if it's way too small? You see, or what if the angle's way off? So we're going to actually go through and check to see exactly all the particular dimensions that the capstone was designed around. And from that, there's going to be two things that we're going to, the two conclusions that we're going to come to. And the first conclusion, we're going to do it mathematically. So being that, I'm not a land surveyor, and you can't just go off what I say, even though I could look at the capstone and kind of get an idea that it's not 60 degrees, it's not necessarily 50 degrees, or I could hold, a protractor or a compass up to the capstone and kind of eyeball it. We're going to go and we're actually going to get someone involved who's licensed, certified professional to do an actual land survey on the capstone and tell us exactly the dimensions. So what we're looking at here is a work order, and I'm just going to kind of take you through it briefly, from Professional Land Surveyors of Arizona. See, the owner was David H. Horner, and this all began September 16th, 2002. I went down there. First I talked with him, then I went down there and told him about what I was looking to have done. Then he wrote up a work order and he was going to go do it. So when we sat down on September 16th, 2002, from David Valentin, we see the address there. Now when it comes to the work order, this work order is made and entered the 16th day of September 2002 by and between Professional Land Surveyors of Arizona, David H. Horner, surveyor, and David Valentin, the client, for services to be rendered in connection with the following property: Capstone Cathedral on Tatum and Shea. The surveyor's scope of work shall constitute and be limited to the following: calculate base and vertex angles, prepare report with math used to determine the angles. See, that's what I wanted to know. That's what I wanted to know. So the estimated price is between $600 and $800. And he goes on to say within this paragraph, any survey, field work, drafting, computer service, or if there's trees or cactuses in the way, I'll be charged an hourly rate. Then the payment, a down payment of $400 is to be paid prior to commencement of the project. And final payment in full on the day it's completed. I agree to that. Collection, what would happen in case I didn't pay. Interest that would be accrued, none of that was going to happen. I was, waiting for him to get this done and had the money in hand. So none of that was needed, but there it's in the work order. So upon return of this signed work order, and receipt of the above stipulated deposit, work is scheduled to commence on September 26, 2002. You can see David Horner and myself signed the work order 9/16/02, which incidentally, this is September 8th, 2014, so we're almost 12 years beyond when I started this. So now the statement, we see October 10th, 2002, David Valentin. The job number, in case we want to reference it, is 220907. This is the invoice for surveying services provided by Professional Line Surveyors of Arizona, David H. Horner, surveyor for client David Valentin. Surveyor's scope was limited to the following: calculate base and vertex angles and prepare the report to determine the angles. For services rendered in connection with Capstone Cathedral. Balance due was $400. That's what I owed, so I ended up paying the whole $800 to, basically have this information. So it's not just what I say, that we get this professional surveyor involved. Let's see what he says. It was our pleasure to provide your surveying services. Please call us with any future surveying needs. David Horner, 10/10/02. Then the receipt, the date, October 10th for David, same job number. Give me the receipt for the work, calculate base and vertex angles for Capstone Cathedral. The total price was $800. You see David goes ahead and signs it and puts his professional seal of approval on the document. So seeing the work order, okay, seeing the receipt, seeing how much I paid and all that. Now we're actually going to get into the report. So here, the day before, that last page that was on October 10th, here on October 9th, 2002, we see the report prepared for David Valentin. Company name, Professional Land Surveyors of Arizona, with their address. Now here's the project summary. Instrument used was a Nikon NT-D4, serial number 300841, calibrated 9/25/02 by Surveyors Instruments Service Company. That's important to know that the instrument was calibrated and it was tuned just to fine level of detail, precise instrument. He used a brand new Lufkin 200 fully graduated steel tape. Field work started and completed on 9/26/02. Average temperature was 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's important because with heat, it could play on the instrument. So it was an average temperature of 86 degrees. Field work accuracy was 1 in 17,940. Adjusted 1 in 38,000. Vertex and base angles, see attached diagram. We have his signature and his seal of approval here on the document. So, okay. So here, what he did was, we'll look at two panels, the actual panels, and then we'll look at those panels on how they slope down. Okay, so here's the north pyramid panel, and the north pyramid panel on its slope. So the hypotenuse, basically, the 34.3037, is that panel sloped down. Okay, so he does the north and he does the east pyramid panel. All right, so here's the east pyramid panel, and then the 34.3398, the hypotenuse of the triangle, that's the east pyramid panel on its slope. All right. So we'll quickly look over these panels to see their dimensions. So we'll go from north to east. North, that length, the bottom of the triangle, is 38.9338 feet. On the east pyramid panel, 38.9082 feet. So we see 38.9, it's pretty much identical. So now the side, for the north pyramid panel, 39.4146, and the east pyramid panel, 39.4681. So again, pretty much identical. And comparing that to the bottom, we see 39-ish feet, 38-ish feet, not absolutely identical, so we can say it's an equilateral triangle, but it's very close. We'll move on here. So on North Pyramid Panel, 39.4703 feet, East Pyramid Panel 39.4669 feet. So between those two panels, they're pretty close, almost identical. Okay, so now for the angles inside of the panel. Now we're just looking at the panels now, not the angle of the pyramid. We're just looking at the panels. North Pyramid Panel, 60 degrees, 21 minutes, 16 seconds. So we can see how precise that angle is. And I set this presentation up early on in the beginning so that we'd have an idea what all these numbers kind of mean. Okay, I know we didn't go into all these math problems to show how they all relate and everything, but I just don't want to throw you in to this presentation expecting to know what this number means, 60 degrees, 21 minutes, 16 seconds. So I try to prepare you for that number, for these numbers. So East Pyramid Panel, we see 60 degrees, 28 minutes, 9 seconds. So about 60 degrees between both panels. So now the angle over here for the North Pyramid Panel, 60 degrees, 29 minutes, 49 seconds. The East Pyramid Panel, 60 degrees, 27 minutes, 58 seconds. So pretty much 60 degrees there. Then moving on here to the top panel, or the top angle of the North Panel, 59 degrees, 8 minutes, 55 seconds. East Pyramid Panel, 59 degrees, 3 minutes, 53 seconds. So we see they're pretty close. So overall, say almost 60 degrees, and 60 degrees all the way around at each angle is an equilateral triangle. So we'll move on now that we saw the lengths and angles. Let's look at how the panels sit on the slope. So now this is giving us more or less a cross section of the capstone. So we're looking at the pyramid here, like a cross section. So how the panels slope down. So on the North Pyramid Panel, how it slopes down, the base angle, we see 55 degrees, 33.26 minutes, 53 seconds. For the East Pyramid Panel, we see 55 degrees, 27 minutes, 38.51 seconds. That's how it is. Okay, so 55, almost 55 and a half-ish degrees for how they're sloping down. The vertex angle, or the base angle. So then looking over here, the top angle we see for the North Pyramid Panel, 34 degrees, 26 minutes, 33.47 seconds. So it's super precise when it's coming to the vertex angle, because I wanted to know the base and vertex angles. That was what I specified. He's getting unbelievably detailed here. So, and the East Pyramid Panel was 34 degrees, 32 minutes, 21.49 seconds. So basically 34 degrees between the two. So now to bring in that earlier slide, I was telling you the Great Pyramid actually was to be constructed at 54 degrees for the base angles. Okay. Now looking at where the capstone sits, we're at 55 degrees, 33 minutes, 26.53 seconds. So it's very close. And mind you, the capstone's over 40 years old, sitting out in the hot, desert heat of Arizona, where, it could warp and flex on those panels. And even after all the weathering and everything that the capstone had to endure, you can see how it pretty much held its form, I would say. It held together pretty good. So taking these numbers, 54 degrees and the 55 degrees, 33 minutes, 26.53 seconds, and do the math, to see how the capstone is slightly off from the pure 54 degrees. When we do the math, we see 1 degree, 33 minutes, 26.53 seconds, which is actually really good though. I mean, a degree and a half, you know, when we're dealing with a capstone that's over 30 feet long, you see, 28.29 feet high, that are only a degree and a half off. I mean, that's like as good or better than aerospace tolerances, you see. So on parts made for airplanes and satellites and stuff, I mean, that plus or minus a degree, you know, in most cases. So I mean, this is actually really good. It's very close. So knowing that, we can take that 1 degree, 33 minutes, 26.53 seconds and apply it to the vertex angle. So if to actually do the math to make sure everything rings true, you know, that everything comes about in its purest form, we could double check the numbers. We take the error and add it to the vertex angle. We see we get exactly 36 degrees. Okay, so if we take the 36 degrees, because David Horner's only giving us half of the vertex angle, because when I want to know the vertex angle of the three-dimensional structure, he's giving us half the vertex, as you can see in the North Pyramid panel diagram. So if we add 36 to the other side, okay, and we mirror the dimensions over, we see 54 degrees at both base angles and 36 at the top, which basically, if you add them together, it's 72 degrees. And the one thing about a triangle is the sum of all internal angles in a triangle always equals 180 degrees, always. So if we add the two base angles, 54 plus 54, we get 108. We move the 108 over and add it to the vertex angle of 72, we get 180. So we see that all comes together and rings true. All right, so we're super close. We're very close to being at 54 degrees for the north, for the base angles of the capstone, and very close for 72 degrees for the vertex angle. And that's important because it's not 60. And you'll see why as we move on, how we're closer to 54 than anything. All right. So David Horner gave us the 38.9338 feet for the length of the capstone, but the Great Pyramid, it's missing the capstone. That length is 30.6985 feet. So we can see the capstone is slightly bigger than the area missing from the Great Pyramid. So if we did apply the capstone, how it sits now, just how it is, it would just barely grab the edges of the Great Pyramid. So I have this little picture here where you can just see how it's just barely cupping over the top, you see. So it bears the proper dimensions to actually sit on top of the Great Pyramid. See, it's not, you know, too small and it's not way big, right? So it's right there. So now we're going to move on. So like I said, there's going to be two things that we're going to two conclusions that we're going to kind of come to. One, we can see the capstone does bear the proper dimensions to sit on top of the Great Pyramid, but there is yet a deeper meaning here, deeper point that we can draw out. David Horner took us one place and he did the math so we can properly go the next place. And I want to go back and let's look at the capstone formations before we push on with that. Here's formation 1. We saw the sign, the pyramid, and the building. Then formation 3, sign, pyramid, Cave Creek Center, the building, and here I go ahead and put the puzzle in. That was like kind of, the height of the mind game. When we got to that, we had to use our mind, see the pieces, put the puzzle together. And when we did that, remember I brought in that point where I didn't touch too heavily on, but we're left with a replica. We see a replica between formation 1 and formation 3. And let me read this definition down here for replica. And this is fine arts. A copy of a work of art as of a picture or statue made by the maker of the original. And 2, down here we see repetition. You can thank Webster's Revised Unabridged Dictionary 1996 for that definition. So again, it's not a copy, because if it was a copy, it would be an absolute copy, or duplicate. It's absolutely the same. But we can see that these two are very similar. And if we have to draw those points out, we can see we're left with, we have common signs in position. Okay? And then when the puzzle's complete, we see green pyramids in position as well. And then there's the rainbow indicator, the rainbow seats, and then the Cave Creek Center, those expanding seas. Then when it came to the building, which is very significant, that we have Neil on his template who wrote, he said it, that he had the Spirit. Then I'm on the template making the same claim that I have God's Spirit. So we see two individuals that are saying they got the Spirit. So we see a replica, between Tatum and Shea and Cave Creek and Greenway Road. Between these two land masses, there's a lot of duplicate iconography or same sort of situation occurring, on one end and then on the other. So what makes this phenomenally intriguing and phenomenally amazing and creative is where we left off in the third formation when it came to the puzzle. So let's go there. So I go ahead, and if you look at the orange, the yellow and the cranberry, I kind of bring it in to try and emphasize the point of what the puzzle is, how those yellow protrusions coming off the green triangle latches in between those different color C's. You see that they latch in between there. And the green pyramid lays in that game board, if you like to look at it, that rainbow sort of bands. The green pyramid just lays in there. So the green pyramid is part of a circular puzzle. See? Very simple concept. The green pyramid is part of a circular puzzle. So here is an example of laying more pieces down in there. Okay? So this is just 4 pieces that I laid in there without overlapping them and making it really complicated. So here's 4 pieces. Now remember that. The green pyramid is part of a circular puzzle. We see it here in the third formation. All right, let's go back here. So remember, formation 1, and then we have formation 3. They're replicas. Okay? They're replicas. They're the same. They're copies. So there's green pyramids now in position, and it's a copy. Green pyramids are in position. Now one of them in formation 3, in the third formation, is a circular puzzle piece. So if formation 1 and formation 3 are copies, data is being revealed in the third formation that tells us information about the first formation. If they're copies, or if they're duplicates or replicas, or if they're the same, if I'm a puzzle piece over here in the third formation, if the green pyramid's part of a circular puzzle, The green pyramid in formation 1 is part of a circular puzzle as well. If we're copies, member, and I'm a puzzle piece over here, then I'm a puzzle piece over here as well. So, all right, and that's amazing. Let's look at this now. So that's why I was pushing towards understanding the dimensions for the capstone, understanding the angles more than anything. You know, knowing the length. Okay, so we know it's going to sit on the Great Pyramid. So we see we're super close to having 54 degrees at the base and 72 degrees at the vertex. Why? Right? Why? This is why. This little piece down here is a section of something. I'm going to pull it up what it's a section of. It's a section of a regular pentagon. You see where all the sides are equal on the side with the same inner angles. So the vertex we see is 72 degrees. So if we have 5 of those pieces stacked on top of one another, and we do the math, 72 times 5 we see is 360. Remember, because it takes 360 degrees to make one complete rotation. Again, that's why, again, I started this presentation off with going into, when it comes to like one full revolution, how many degrees is it? It's 360 degrees. Okay, so that's what makes this so important. So the capstone we see is sitting here basically at 54 degrees for the base angle and 72 for the vertex. What I'm going to do now is put the panel up there. And I actually created this in a 3D drafting program, and you can see the design is actually on a slope. But now we have been granted access to understand this panel. Okay, and this is coming from actually the third formation. Third formation is telling us what to do in the first formation. It's feeding information back. So we can see, because of that ingeniously creative sort of link between those two landmasses, one landmass is sending information back to the first, you know, that the capstone is part of a circular puzzle. So, okay, let's do the puzzle. We have one piece over here, but if we replicate this piece, okay, now we have 2 pieces, now we have 3 pieces, now we have 4 pieces, and now we have 5 pieces. Oops. We have 5 easy pieces here. So looking at this design, now we can understand, we can see that the design on the capstone incorporates itself amongst itself essentially to reveal a rotating starburst. And we can see there's a concentrated burst at the center, then it kind of rotates out. We see that second burst, then it rotates out again, and we see the bigger starburst. So we see 3 starbursts essentially. It's one big burst with 3 distinct stars within it. So that is the design on the capstone. It's hidden. It's a hidden thing. Why? What? Why? So what? Why is that? Right? It could have been. It could have been anything. What does a starburst have to do with the capstone? And the capstone is relative to the Great Pyramid. So how does all this tie together? So we'll move on there though. But here we can see now a starburst. And how this starburst was created? By feeding information back from the third formation into the first. And I think that is just unbelievably amazing. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Now remember, I told you that there is a designer designing, and now we're beginning to see what it is that was being designed. Okay, so This is unbelievably amazing. We're going to move on. So going back into the second formation within the capstone formations, we see cathedral automotives. And I zoomed in the earlier presentation, the capstone formations, to show you the cathedral pentagons. We saw a pentagon surrounding the first letter in both words. It was like a stained glass appearance, as we can see inside the pentagons. And we kind of consider, well, I mean, the capstone isn't necessarily like a stained glass display, but in a way it kind of is, but it's not so irregularly colored like most stained glass things are. So in a way, this could have been a hint being dropped down by the Spirit, telling us about how the pentagon is part of the system here that it's creating. So now, think about this. Think about this. Neil over here, he has the Starburst. Do you think he does not know that he has a Starburst, a puzzle piece, a capstone puzzle piece that creates a Starburst above his roof on his church? I would most definitely say I think he does. And most people out there would say, of course, he knew what he was doing when he did it. But when it comes to the mysteries of the capstone ministry, we can see Neil knew that particular mystery, and we can see now it's making its way across to me in the third formation. All right, I just all of a sudden just knew what was going on with that capstone. I just knew before it was even me going about it logically to say, okay, well, the green pyramid in the third formation is part of a circular puzzle, so obviously because this is a copy, I go back into the first formation, I could tell you now what the green pyramid above your roof is all about. So this is just an exercise to show that what the Spirit set out to do and was utilizing with Neil Frisbee, it is utilizing me and revealing these mysteries, because this is now just like the second step. You see, we understood the capstone formations. What's up with the capstone? Now we're understanding the design of the capstone, but there's still another level that we need to complete before we could really begin to understand what's happening and for this project to really take shape. Okay? Because let's talk about any geometry teacher. They could probably have gone and looked at the capstone and said, you want to know what? That's 1/5 of a pentagon, and it's part. If we take 5 of those pieces and stack them end to end on top of one another, that design makes a starburst. So they happen to know. But what does that have to do with anything? You see, so it's kind of like not a dead end, but it's the step beyond that needs to be taken to explain why it is what it is. And that is what the master structure is. We're going to explain, it's going to bring everything into perspective. So we have to get there though. So, okay. So I think it's a starburst. I think the design is the starburst. Now that's what I think. What does Neil Frisbee have to say about the design on the capstone? See, now it's like, okay, we have Dave's opinion, right? Dave's opinion on what he thinks it is. What does Neil say about it? So we're going to look at some things Neil wrote. So this over here on the left side is the front cover that I scanned of a book. I rotated it, scanned it, of a book entitled Book of Letters to the Saints. That's a page that I scanned there. It's like the introductory page that I scanned from the book. And we can see at the top, this book is a compilation of letters written by Neil Frisbee since February 1970. then we can see on the bottom, inspired message printed July 1973. So we have that little time frame to deal with when these letters were written and then printed. So inside that book, if we go to page 43, this is what Neil says. The building is very mysteriously designed by the Lord, and you would just have to see it to understand all about it. It is like an iron eagle with wings outspread, sitting in white stone, covering his elect. So here I've got this image of an eagle with its wings outspread. So down here I underlined wings outspread, and I'm kind of drawing a connection here, trying to draw a connection, showing you how that looks like the V in the center of the capstone has those triangles, those long triangles coming off the capstone, or from the middle bottom of the V in both directions. So those could be like the wings of an eagle, and it's going up. So there's the wings outspread. Then underlying down here, sitting in white stone. So the building was painted white all around it. So it's like an iron eagle sitting in white stone. So that's one place Neil tries to describe it. And he says very mysteriously designed. Okay, and most importantly, he says it is like an iron eagle. Neil doesn't say that it is an iron eagle. Because if he wanted to actually make an eagle, I think they could have done much better than that. So now here's a scan from page 60 and 75. And what he says here in page 60, P.S. I'm reading here from the top. If anyone wonders why we spoke a little extra concerning finances, it is because this temple costs more than the average church, and it is the largest in Arizona. It is valued at a vast sum. God will own it. See that? It will be paid for, and what a place my partners will have to worship in. We will be looking forward to all of you who can to come and see it this fall. Watch our letters for dates of prayer for the sick. Wonderful things are definitely ahead. The Capstone building is destined to be the greatest wonder on the earth. Really. All of your requests this month will be taken to a special place, and I will not let you down in prayer. And we'll be expecting your letter. So two things that are very shocking within this paragraph that I read was, of course, definitely the first thing. Neil goes on to say, God will own it. And that's Neil's words. That's Neil's words. Now, is Neil talking about himself? Who is Neil talking about? God will own it. Is he talking about himself? No, or is he talking about the Spirit? We'll be in possession of the Spirit. So that's it. That's something interesting to see. And then he goes on to say, the Capstone building is destined to be the greatest wonder on the earth. Why would he say that? Why would anyone talk about their church in such a manner? I mean, unless they're trying to get people to come to it. But why would it be the greatest wonder on the earth? It is a wonder in a way for people who may be driving up and down Tatum, right, as they're on their journeys to look and see, oh, I wonder what that church is about, you know. But there's something more to it than just that. And now we're beginning to see the insight that it would appear as though Neil had, that he knew that this was important, that it was going to be part of something great. You know, it's part of God's design. So here, that's where now Neil never went into what it was, but now here I am going into telling you what it is. So that's very interesting that he writes that there. Okay. And I would think that it is definitely now being revealed and given that status of the greatest wonder on the earth, because this is where it all starts. So page 75, look at what Neil says. We are in the dimension of the Most High God. All the treasures belong to him. The temple grounds here are worth much more than the Vatican City. See that? In fact, there is no earthly price to compare, and we are only trying to show the value of all this. Neil believes that this area over here is worth much more than the Vatican City. You know, I mean, when it comes to, and I will say this, the actual presence of the Creator, the actual presence, you know, do you think it's over in the Vatican? Do you think those works are godly? You know, now here I am showing you absolutely the works of the Creator and something that is absolutely divinely inspired. So I'll let you make that decision. But Neil, this is what Neil's saying here. So, you know, when it comes to the capstone formations, you know, I made it definitely clear that Capstone Cathedral is to be turned over to me. You know, and I am proving, showing that I do have the Spirit of God. And Neil does, in his own words, go on to say that God will own it and that there's actually no earthly price. So I'm not looking to buy it. You're just going to turn it over to me, you see. So, and these are Neil's own words. So turn over Capstone Cathedral. So now here, let's look at this. Now we saw this video. Okay. We zoomed in. The harpy talked about going back. Here I am in the third formation, making my way back to the first formation. And, you know, the process is all set out there. You know, David is well aware of the capstone formations. David's aware he needs to go to the first formation and tell them basically, you know, here, look at what's happening. You know, Neil is finishing his term within the Capstone Cathedral. Now here comes the next leader to push the message forward. So I have to make my way over there. So did I do it? Yes, I did do it. And we're going to talk about what happened. So the Spirit of God urged me to fabricate the Starburst puzzle and present it to Neil Frisbee. That's the best way to put it. It's like an urge or an impression that I feel and that I know. And it's like an urgency to do it. Like I have to do this. You see, it's not that I'm hearing things in my head. It's not like that. And with the individuals that built everything within Phoenix, Arizona, it's the same way. They just kind of instinctively, wait, I have this idea of what I need to do. You know, and then it's just from that point on, you work with it. Here with me, it's a little bit more personal or intimate because I'm taking pictures and making videos of these things and putting them together. You see, so it's not like I'm kind of, you know, in the dark with what I'm doing, and it's like, well, I just need to have a business because I want to make money. That's not, I'm not in that category with all the people that were on the business end of things, where they were building businesses and building certain structures and things. So it was an urge, okay, to fabricate the Starburst puzzle. The Starburst puzzle would suggest to Neil Frisbee, the Spirit of God is revealing to me the mysteries of the Capstone ministry. That's just one of many mysteries. Upon seeing, this is Neil now, upon seeing the Starburst puzzle and the master structure, so we haven't gotten there yet, but I had the master structure first, and we'll get to that in the next presentation. But upon seeing the Starburst puzzle and the master structure, Neil Frisbee would feel confident to follow through with the Spirit of God's demand to turn over Capstone Cathedral to me. Okay, so we see, information is being pushed into this individual's area, and it is he now who needs to continue on with what was started. So Neil would see this stuff and feel confident. So that's the idea. So let's talk about it. So in 2001, I designed, programmed, and machined miniature aluminum replicas of the Capstone Cathedral capstone. Back then I was a manufacturing engineer working in a CNC machine shop. So here's some blueprints that I made of the capstone, and I would check them with my gauges and instruments and stuff as I was making them, making sure they were ultra precise. And I actually documented the process. So here's a aluminum capstone that came off the machine that was cut with the CNC machine. So the capstones were anodized turquoise and hand painted to resemble the Capstone Cathedral capstone. So here's some pictures of the finished product. And the capstone's green, but I couldn't get green anodized. The company, they had problems with green, and turquoise was the closest color. And I got a red paint marker and painted in between all the little lines there, and then actually took the capstone and sanded it on sandpaper to take the top layer of the turquoise off and reveal the shiny paneling, which also removed the little paint in case I got it on top of that top layer. So here's actually the finished products of the capstones, and I made I think over 60 of them. I think I still about have half of them. Most of them after I took these pictures, I bubble wrapped them and boxed them up, and they're still boxed up. So here's the capstones. An aluminum pentagon frame was fabricated to captivate 5 capstones. So this blueprint's kind of hard to see, but it's this one piece that's, if you take 5 of them, you could run a bolt through the back and screw the pieces together. So this is actually the finished product when you take 5 of these pieces and screw them together, and I put the little heartbeat in there to keep it, part of the reoccurring theme with Capstone Cathedral. There's the heartbeats that run above the door, the entrance into the capstone. So here's the pentagon frame. So here's the completed Starburst puzzle, where the capstones fit precisely within the pentagon frame, and if you loosen up one of the bolts, you could kind of snug the frame on it, then tighten it, and the capstones, they're not coming out. So I took that. The puzzle was put into a wooden box and gift wrapped to present to Neil Frisbee. So I took the puzzle into Craftsmart down the street and sized it and got this box here. Here's a picture of the box. And then that's what it would look like with the puzzle sitting inside. Neil would open it up, and that's what he would see. So there's the puzzle. So here's the date. On 4/13/02, I took the package to the house of Neil Frisbee. I went to the first formation. Neil Frisbee was not home. I waited 15 minutes, and then Curtis Frisbee drove up to the house with Neil Frisbee sitting passenger. So I was out there knocking on the door, ringing the doorbell, kind of waited around. I'm like, look, we need to do this, So, and then they come pulling up in their car. Neil Frisbee did not get out of the car. Curtis got out of the car and asked me what he could help me with. Curtis is Neil's son. I asked to speak to Neil Frisbee. Curtis said there was no time because company was coming over. Okay, that's fair. I know I'm kind of just, coming in here and, they're on their doorstep and they got other plans and things going on, but, they're getting to know me because I'm not a member of their church. This isn't anything that they put me up to. And here I am, this individual standing there. So Curtis told me to make an appointment with the Capstone Cathedral receptionist on Sunday. I gave the present to Curtis and told him it was for Neil. So then I go down that coming up Sunday to Capstone Cathedral. I gave the Capstone Cathedral receptionist my phone number. Capstone would call me when Neil was feeling better. The Capstone Cathedral receptionist presented me with a thank you card with Neil's rubber stamp signature. So here's a scan of the thank you card. There's the front. Then inside it says, "Dear David, thank you very much. I want to personally thank you for the very unique gift. I sincerely appreciate it. Lord bless you, Neil Frisbee." And on the package, I had to Neil from David. So they knew my name and it's in there. So that was really nice of them, or nice of the receptionist. So I waited a few months and never received a call from Capstone Cathedral. Then I went down there. I made another appointment with the Capstone Cathedral receptionist and had to re-give her my phone number. So I'm sure she took my phone number and, of course, just passed it on to the next person in line to get it to Neil. So I never received a call from anyone at any point ever, which was, a little disappointing, because I'm more or less just doing what I'm told, and it's like, I never heard from anyone. So I did not want to seem like a fanatic, so I let Capstone Cathedral put up their block and waited to see what the Spirit of God would do to remove it. So I went down there a few times, and I was beginning to look like a fanatic, and that's not what this is about, So what I have here is a reenactment of power. I have Moses versus Egypt. You see, when we read the story in the Torah scroll, Moses was told to go in there and tell Pharaoh to let my people go and all that. And the Torah scroll goes on to say that the Creator hardened the heart of Pharaoh, that he was pulling on the strings, making Pharaoh stubborn. And because of that, Egypt would be judged, that they were being hit with plagues. Moses would go in, Pharaoh's heart would be hardened, and down comes another plague. So this, in a way, is a lesson. We're going to see what happens, okay? We're going to see what happens to those, in a sense, that stand in the way of the Spirit's mission, okay? So, and we're going to get to that in the Capstone simulation, which is a few presentations down the road here within the master plan. But something is going to happen. And I like to look at it as though it was a reenactment of power, Moses versus Egypt. I'm being told to do something, and it's not working out. So let's see. We'll sit back and see what happens. So I do have this point, though. If I was a pastor and someone unraveled my capstone puzzle, I would take 5 minutes to hear what they have to say. You see, I take 5 minutes to hear what they have to say. And I don't have it here in the presentation, is that I had a really bad kink in my neck. I went down to the chiropractor, and I actually ended up bumping into Neil Frisbee, who was down there. And I had to talk with him. And I told him I was the one that made the puzzle. I'm trying to talk with him. And he's like, "Oh, make an appointment with a receptionist to come down and talk with me." You see, then I went down again and said, "Hey, I talked to Neil at the chiropractic group over here, and he told me to make an appointment." And I'd make an appointment, and then I'd never hear from him. You see, I pretty much would like to say they know I was there to take the church, and they just didn't want to give it up. So, but whatever the case is, I have the note down there. If I was a pastor and someone unraveled my capstone puzzle and would go and went through all the steps and all that to make it very nice and neat and pretty. A nice little package. Not even take 5 minutes to hear them out. Anyhow, so that's what happened. Did I go down there? Did I try to go through the motions of what the Spirit set out as it's playing with everyone's heads in Phoenix, Arizona to create the capstone formations and what it means? Yes, I did. When did I do it? On 4/13/02. So the conclusion to this presentation, listen now here. Deeper investigation into the capstone formations phenomenon concludes that that formation 3 is a replica of formation 1. That's important to remember, that we're analyzing the capstone formations. Remember that coincidence that we looked at in the past presentation? We looked into it to see that formation 3 is a replica of formation 1. The green pyramid in formation 3 is part of a circular puzzle. Okay? Now watch how this comes together. Logic would suggest the green pyramid in formation 1 is part of a circular puzzle due to the fact that formation 3 is a replica of formation 1. You know, that these two things here are replicas. So if this thing is one thing, that means this thing over here needs to be it as well. So a professional survey was performed on the capstone to determine the base and vertex angles. The geometry obtained from the survey reports concludes that it would take exactly 5 capstones to make a complete circular puzzle. The design on the panels of the capstone collaborate together to reveal a starburst. That's interesting. Starburst. The Spirit of God erected a puzzle in formation 1 so that it could put the puzzle together in formation 3 in an effort to prove that it is here and reclaim its property. That it's creating all these puzzles, saying, okay, I was over here, I was over there. It's putting the pieces together so we can see where the entity is. Okay, now we see, wait, the entity, we see what it did over here. We see it moved over here. Now we see where it is. And in an effort to prove that it is here and reclaim its property. David Valentin manufactured the Starburst puzzle and gave it to Neil Frisbee on 4/13/02. The administration of Capstone Cathedral knew that I was attempting to make contact with Neil Frisbee years before Robert Brooks was introduced to Neil Frisbee. And they know that. They know it. They never took the time, and no one ever took the time to hear him out. You know, no idea about the capstone formations. You know, when the Starburst puzzle, you know, I spoke with a particular individual there who's been going to that church for over a decade, who saw the puzzle and didn't know that it was pieces of the capstone. And I sat there explaining to the individual, I'm like, it's 5 capstones. When you put them together, it makes a starburst. Then they're like, oh, and they were super excited. Now they kind of, you know, understood what the design of the panel is about. But anyhow, they knew I was there, and they knew I was coming, and they didn't want to listen. So we'll see what happens when we make our way into the capstone simulation. So ultimately, this is something we need to understand. Formation 1 and Formation 3 interplay off each other. That's important to remember. Formation 1 and Formation 3 interplay off each other. It is because of this fact the thought should be solidified that the capstone formations are not coincidental. It's not a coincidence. There is a hidden dimension within Formation 3 that reveals what is in Formation 1. This sort of interplay shows that there is something designing the layout of Paradise Valley. So that is a very important paragraph, because again, as I make my way through this, more and more and more often, it's all just one huge validating point that the capstone formations are not coincidental. Okay, so now the Capstone Starburst was all about showing how Formation 1 and Formation 3 are replicas, and because of Formation 3, we know what is in Formation 1. There is a designer, there is a creator, there is a plan for this creation, you see, and what that plan is being revealed. Praise God. So what's next? What's next? What can we anticipate next? So I have here a picture of the Great Pyramid in Egypt, and I have this down here. How is the design on the capstone and the concept of a starburst relative to the Great Pyramid? See, that's important to understand here, that the capstone is to sit on top of the Great Pyramid. That is going to be its hat, basically, it's going to wear. Why would the Great Pyramid identify itself with this panel here that incorporates itself into a starburst? What does a starburst have to do with the Great Pyramid? All right. So why should this capstone be applied to the Great Pyramid? There is a massive reason why, and it is super phenomenal. We're going to be getting to that in the next presentation. So, for the Star Trilogy, we saw here in the capstone formations, the highlight was the puzzle, that the green pyramid is part of a circular puzzle. And because of that, we moved into the Capstone Starburst to realize that the capstone is part of a circular puzzle. The concept carries over, and because of that puzzle, now we're given the next bit of information of the circular puzzle reveals a starburst. So where do we go from that point? And I'll leave you with that thought. The next presentation is the master structure, and we're actually be looking into a hidden numeric sequence that we're going to stitch together to reveal something very amazing. And I'm looking forward to giving that presentation. I hope that this presentation has been inspiring, and that it may provoke you, to maybe we'll say get yourself a Torah scroll and read it. Read it knowing when it comes to spiritual matters, there are things that are occurring around you, and that there is a creator, and to be inspired to read into that book, knowing that you're not wasting your time, knowing that it is a book that has tremendous validity to it now, to see what it talks about in the script emulating itself out here in the real world. So I look forward to seeing you in the master structure.